Welcome back. When we left our last lesson, you may remember we talked about not trying to fight the alligators, but instead take the approach of draining the swamp. Fortunately, I discovered how to drain the swamp by learning to work on the business, not just in the business. I learned to create an environment where alligators could not survive and threaten my leadership in my business. It's what kept me aware of my true north and headed toward my envisioned future. I started working proactively, which was my natural bent prior to my dad's death, rather than reactively. I began to pause from my day-to-day work activity for reflection, planning, and preparation. Within a couple years after taking this proactive approach to our business by working on the business, not just in the business, we experienced triple-digit growth, and we had the highest amount of profits in the history of our company. We kept employing this approach year after year and eventually grew our fledgling company to an organization with over 150 employees. Over time, I began to call this simple approach the on and in leadership practice. Work on the business while we work in the business. The good news is that any leader can tap the power of the on and in practice to grow his business. So what exactly does it mean to work on the business while we work in the business? You've heard the old saying, don't just sit there, do something. That's a good description of what it means to work in the business. Your focus on tactics, achieving results, serving customers, and doing what needs to be done. Well, when you work on the business, the saying should be, don't just do something, sit there. But don't sit idly. Plan what is to be accomplished by when and what needs to be done along the way so that when you get back to working in the business, you've chosen the right tactics to achieve the results you want. You know, distant racers learn that they can start off too fast in a race if they don't have a plan and pace themselves. Mountain climbers know it's not good enough to reach the top if they haven't allowed enough time and provisions for climbing down, they'll die. Underwater divers must plan what to do and when to return to the surface, or they too will die. And as a true North business leader, your first task is to plan your journey with the pace, time, and provisions you need for optimal outcome. It's another paradox. To achieve greater levels of success, you need to spend less time working in the business and make regular time to work on the business. As we wrap up this lesson, let's stop and think. What percentage of your time are you working in your business? What percentage of your time are you working on your business?